All right. Hey, on today's episode of the Leadership Puzzle, we have an amazing guest, a true leader with over 30 years of experience in human resources and operations and policy creation at the state level. He has an impressive career with executive roles in industry giants like Intel, Micron, and TSMC. Scott Holman hung up his corporate hat, but was lured back into an opportunity to help shape Arizona's workforce development strategies. What an amazing chance to do something great. So he collaborated with the state to enhance a workforce readiness for the growing technology sector, and he served as the CEO of the Workforce Readiness and Solution Foundation. So, Scott, you have been instrumental in aligning education with industry needs in the state of Arizona. So I'm really excited for our conversation. Welcome, Scott. Thanks for taking time to talk to us today.
Jeff, thank you very much for the invitation. I found out that I had a little bit of a passion about workforce development and talent pipeline in the state of Arizona after I left TSMC back in December of 2023, and who would have known? It was inspiring. It was fun to be part of, and it was solving a greater issue than just our local geographical area. It was trying to solve an issue not only for advanced technology careers, but for about every industry in Arizona, which was the cool part as I get to explore things outside of semiconductors.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool experience.
Well, let's we could start almost anywhere. You have an amazing career, as I mentioned, with big multinational companies. But since you brought up this opportunity that you had with the state of Arizona with advanced manufacturing technology, what did you see as the biggest gaps that caused you to go, hey, let's the state
Yeah.
fill those gaps?
That's a great question. It just kind of happened very naturally. So, as the head of HR at TSMC for 2.5 years, I spent a lot of time on workforce development boards at the state, the city, the county
Mm.
levels, advisory boards for some of the career technical education districts across the state of Arizona. And you'd attend these meetings and you talk for an hour and a half, right? And then you attend another one a month or two later, or the quarter, whatever frequency we're on. And I didn't feel like there was a lot of work being delivered. We talked about a lot of things. I used the term I used the other day, and I said it felt like we were trying to boil the ocean, right? And
Yeah.
that's near impossible. But that was the effort with the state funding and the city funding, et cetera. Well, back in August of last year, I had a gentleman that asked to come and talk to me about yet another workforce development board. And I said, no. Eventually, because a good friend of mine, superintendent at WestMech, a career technical education district here in the West Valley, he said, Scott, you need to talk to this guy. And so I met him, and he happened to be the chief of staff or the chief strategy officer at the Department of Education in the state of Arizona. And I invited him out to the site on a Friday afternoon, going, this is going to take about a half hour. We'll be done, right? And he got in there, and I just looked at him and I said, what's going to be different with this commission? And the commission was called the Arizona Education Economic Commission.
Yeah.
What's going to be different between this commission and all the other workforce development boards? And pardon the French, but he says, Scott, we're going to get shit done. Right? Well, the hook had been set at that point. And I was like, now I'm intrigued. Tell me how you're going to go do that.
Right.
Right. And he didn't talk about semiconductors or advanced manufacturing. He talked about industries within the state of Arizona, from mining to advanced manufacturing. And he said, we're going to work and partner with the Department of Education and industry and ask industry what they need from us, education, to do to prepare a talent pipeline for them. And I was sold, because I think that's where the money ball is.
Yeah.
Right? Ask industry, what are your in-demand jobs? Not all of them, because you can't boil the ocean, but what are your in-demand jobs, and what are the skills and capabilities that you need us to build in students, or reskilling adults, or Title III, right, folks, right, don't have a high school diploma yet, they're adults and they're working, they want to get a better paying job. And it just intrigued me. And all of a sudden, this excitement in me went, holy cow, I want to start forming industry groups.
Mm.
Right. And so we did mining, healthcare, we did cybersecurity, manufacturing, food and beverage. Who would have known, right? Semiconductors, advanced manufacturing, places like Lucid, right? But I got to go out and meet with the C-suite of people within these industries and these specific companies. And I would tell them, I said, how many people in the state of Arizona know who you are, what you do, and that you got great paying jobs? And I think that was a hook set by me.
Yeah.
They would go, I'm not sure how to answer that. Well, the reality was, if you were in their geographical area, you kind of knew who they were.
Right.
Still know what kind of jobs they had over there, good paying or not.
Yeah.
In fact, mining's a dirty job. It's dangerous. Well, there's a lot of safety in there, and it's a lot cleaner than people think,
Right.
as I experienced. So we started meeting with these people, and I would tell them 553,651. And they look at me and they go, what's that? And I said, that's the number of kids in junior high school and high school in the state of Arizona back in 2023, 24 timeframe, that in the state. And they said, that's a lot of people, right? That's a lot of 500,000 people, right? How many of those kids know who you are? Oh, by the way, how many of the kids and their parents know who you are,
right?
The jobs you have, and that they're good paying, their kids are going to have a career. And that's where the C-suites joined the commission.
I love
right?
it.
And we formed, I think, 8 or 9 different industry groups, and we started working with them and partnering with the Department of Education, not only in the high schools, but the junior high schools, and with these career technical education districts that all the high schools funnel in depending on where you are across the state.
Right.
And we said, what do you have and where are the gaps? And then industry would partner with them and say, here's what I need to help you fill the gap. So it was a true partnership between industry and education to drive what's needed in the state of Arizona. I get excited about it still to this day because it was such a novel approach. Yeah. What wasn't novel was, as you find out, when I got industry and education, I want to understand who's doing like work out there in our environment, and how do I get them to come on board so we divide and conquer. Right?
Yeah.
How do we solve K through 12? How do we solve, community college? How do we solve university and the skills that are needed there? And a lot of groups are working on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right at one time. And what I also found was everybody held their resources and their money close to their vest. And so the AEC tried to break that paradigm a little bit by saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just collaborated on this stuff? I don't want your resources. I don't want your money. But what industry is telling us is that they need your solution.
Right.
If they understood the solutions that were out there, I think they'd pay good money, right, to have and know where those solutions are. And that's the basis of what we were doing in the AEC over the last year. And we just became a little over a year old now. And I still continue that work, not necessarily directly in the AEC anymore, even though I'm still a member, but in the community at large. And today I'm focusing a lot more out on semiconductors, as I'm doing some work with Amcor technology at the moment.
Right. It's I've long thought that if someone could crack that code between the .com, the .gov, the .edu, and even the .org, right, the nonprofits, yes. if you could truly bring those groups together for a single purpose, you could be transformative, and you've started that process.
It feels like it, but it's a lot harder than even saying it.
Yeah.
The good thing is as more exposure has happened in the state of Arizona, I will say there's more of these efforts popping up that like-minded, but they're still very independent. Mm-hmm. It's about how do you bring the goodness together. So in my new role, I've joined those workforce development boards again. They invited me back, so I don't think I messed it up too bad when I was there the first time. But I'm actually in there driving a different agenda, and that agenda is how we working with the other workforce development boards right? And of course, we have a big one over the state. But I'm doing at the lower level, I think, to say how are we working together to solve these industries? And some of it's
Yeah.
in the sense of bite-sized chunks,
Yeah.
right? Amcor and TSMC are in the West Valley. Well, we have a Westmark Foundation that just started. I was honored to be one of the first board members there, and we're trying to figure out how do we solve the workforce development talent pipeline gap that we have in the West Valley. Again, I think focused on a lot of industry, and then figuring out how do we narrow that down and focus and do it very well for certain industries, a lot of jobs, in demand jobs, good pay, and then we grow from that. So we are
Yeah.
successful in a smaller set
Yeah.
of industry,
Yeah.
and then you work on all the other ones. And the work continues with the other ones, but there's more of a laser focus on the ones that have the most jobs,
Yeah.
the ones that have the higher paying jobs, the ones that are in most demand. And I'll
Right.
give you an example of that. So it's just not semiconductors. And there's a huge need in the state of Arizona now with TSMC, Amcor, Intel, all in the same place and all needing the exact same resources.
Yeah.
Um, but but there's healthcare, right? With that many people coming in, you need better healthcare.
Yeah.
You need more schools, right? But the other one that I think people don't think about when you're talking about growing industry within your state is the number of trades and construction workers that you need to build the darn things before you even start hiring people to do the work inside of those industries. And that is, I think that's the biggest gap right now. I know we as industry are struggling with where we're going to find the talent we need given the sheer numbers. But before we even get there, how is the trades and how are the construction folks getting skilled workers in those trade specialties available to go build the buildings we need to do our work?
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, no one's asked me, but if you ask me, I'd say construction, semiconductor advanced manufacturing, and healthcare would be the top three you go focus
Top
on,
three. Yeah.
right? And then you build from that.
Yeah. I remember when Intel was building the Chandler fab and Akatiyu
Oh
fab.
my gosh,
I mean,
yes.
those were like $2 billion activities. I mean, so
Yeah,
massive construction.
yeah.
And I mean, gosh, that was 20 years ago now.
That's right.
And labor resources were a whole lot more prevalent back
They
then than they are
certainly were.
today. So how do you close that gap? I mean, and you're just talking about West, Arizona, West
Yeah,
Phoenix
yeah.
area, much less the broader U.S.
How do you conquer that? You need to start early, right? You need to start early with kids and their parents so they at least can make good career decisions as early as junior high school and getting exposure to your industry.
Yeah.
And I'll use semiconductor advanced manufacturing as the key. So, someone says, go make wafers. They're like, what? Right? Like a keyboard elf, right? Or, Laverne and Shirley on an assembly line. No, 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 no. This is these high tech jobs that pay very, very well. But the problem is kids and their parents don't know that these things even exist or
Yeah.
how cool they really are. And I
Yeah.
used a term early on with the AEEC in a big group meeting. And I said, listen, semiconductors is not sexy, right? People say manufacturing, and I think parents and a lot of kids immediately go to, oh my gosh, that you can do, anybody can do those jobs.
Yeah.
They're not high paying. It's an assembly line. Because I think without education, people really look and think, see what they have, and it's all based on, their upbringing and where they were and
Right.
they're growing up. But no, we haven't done a good job as an industry to really educate and create the awareness of what are those jobs. I mean, first of all, what do we do?
Yeah.
Right? And how cool is it to work in a bunny suit on a factory floor or be an engineer to solve a problem on a $200 million tool?
Yeah.
Right? I don't think people grasp that. What do you mean 200 million? That's a tool, one tool in the current size factories, $200 million each, and you have an opportunity to go work on it or with it, right? And you get that, and the technology and understanding that, from front end manufacturing like a TSMC and an Intel Microchip NXP to Amcor back end, right, where they put the package in their phone. And so when they crack open one of these things, right, and they see these little black components in there, they go, well, what is that? And we can show them.
Yeah.
Starts from this wafer with a bunch of chips on it. You slice it, dice it, you test it, right? You assemble it and you stick it in a package, and then you insert it in these phones, and that's what makes your phone work.
Right.
People just don't have exposure to that, parents and kids. So we need to do a better job of creating the exposure. That's first.
Yeah.
Second part of this, and I think even more critical, is boy, a young person goes, oh my gosh, I want to do that. How do I learn more?
Yeah.
Right. So you got to provide the avenues for them to learn more, and we'll call them pathways, right? From junior high school. And guess what? One pathway doesn't solve anything.
Mm-hmm.
You need many, many different pathways for kids that are in different situations in life and economic, where they are in the state of Arizona. And I'm just, talking about the state of Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what they don't all have equal opportunity. So how do you create opportunities across the state of Arizona for all the kids to get exposure and find a pathway through high school to get a certificate?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it's not through high school. Maybe there's an after school program that enables them with a certificate. And they're 80% close to what they deliver.
Yeah.
Well, from an Amcor or a TSMC or Intel, I look at that young adult now, and they've got a certificate either from here or from here or from here or from here, and we all know they're 80% the same. I'm going to interview every single one of them if they're interested in my industry. So it's about interest, and then it's about the pathway, and then it's about, hey, you know what? At high school, you get to make a decision.
Yeah.
You can come join us, right, in an entry-level position, a manufacturing tech or specialist or operations specialist, whatever we call them, and you make $40,000, $50,000 a year. Oh, by the way, if you decide to go further, go to a 2-year program, right? Oh, yeah, by the way, if you don't want to do that and you want to go to 4-year, that's available too. And there's more pathways there. And that's how we get operators, technicians, and engineers.
Yeah.
We're building that pipeline. That's where industry needs to focus is on it, how to enable that using the resources that exist to create the pipeline. It's not about a workforce today. It's about the pipeline that I'm terrified of on where's it coming from.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were over in Asia and Intel built the Vietnam assembly test, we actually had to go into the schools, universities.
That's right.
To train that next level soon enough so that when the plant was up and running, we actually had graduating seniors that could do it. And so, clearly that happens some in the U.S., but I'm not sure that it happens as much as it should.
Well, it's an interesting point too. I think when you talk to solution providers or educators, the first question they ask you as industry is, how many do you need and by when?
Yeah.
Well, that's not an easy answer given the cyclicalness of our business, right?
Yeah.
However, we can't have enough in the state of Arizona with TSMC just making their announcement of an additional $100 billion and 3 more fabs, and they're gigafabs. So thousands of people.
Yeah.
We're announced now we're hiring 1,300 in phase 1 in about 2 years, right? You start doing the math, Intel's going to hire eventually, right? To get back on track. NXP is going to have folks, right? So, and by the way, there's similar skill sets to advanced automotive, right? And the solar company. So the competition's huge, but there's enough work both today and in the distant future. I'm talking 10 plus years, right? We're going to have a shortage. We can't have enough. So now it's conversation is, don't worry about the numbers, right? I need them by this date to start my factory. TSMC needs them today, right? But at this date, if it takes 2 years, put them in now as sophomores in either high school or college and or just starting your AA degree. And at the end of that, if they have these certificates and credentials, I'm going to interview them.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be this lull that I'm seeing right after the big announcements for at least the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So the concern of, boy, if I teach them and they graduate and there's no job, that's a problem. And
Yeah.
I agree with it. I don't think that exists in the
That's
state of
not good.
Arizona right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even if there's a lull in Arizona, you've got, gosh, Tesla's building, factories in Austin. And I
Yes.
mean, if that student is willing to
Yeah.
relocate, then, there will be plenty of opportunity. And that's just kind of the high technology semiconductor
Yeah.
battery. There's other automation, other AI. I mean, it's just growing exponentially, really.
Yeah. You think about the ecosystem here too. The raw minerals that you need to actually build a semiconductor, right, come from digging holes in the ground,
Yeah.
right? The mining business is going nuts in the state of Arizona,
Mm.
right? With a bunch of new mining companies coming in because that stuff that they dig out of the ground is the stuff that starts us off on building a semiconductor.
Right.
So it's all sectors that are truly growing. And I love the point that you made. And I apologize, I focus a lot on Arizona, but if you remember in the late 80s, early 90s, that you could start in one semiconductor house, right, and spend 3 years there and then get a 20% increase to go to another semiconductor house because now you're skilled and you've
Right.
got experience. And 5 years after that, you switch to another one. And then, 10 years later, you're back at the one you started with and you're making a heck of a lot more
Yeah.
money. And we're going to see that.
Yeah.
Right. And people will say, well, it's poaching. Well, it's not poaching. It's career development for individuals. Right. And in industry, we have to be okay with it. And
Yeah.
in industry, we need to build a staffing model, right, that actually supports it versus trying to run against it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
This industry has not done well at that. Right. It's like
No.
keep them as long as you can and then go, holy crap, how do I backfill? Right.
Well, I mean, most of technology, especially the Silicon Valley companies, everyone has the same companies on their resume. I mean,
It's so true.
it's very
It's so true.
incestuous.
Yeah. It's funny. Every time I see a resume and it has Intel on it, I go, do I know this person?
I know, right? I know. It's like, oh, I know them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so you've spent a couple years in the government side of things. In the news, there's a whole lot around, perhaps a large number of government employees being on the market.
Yeah.
Part of me goes, wow, if they're willing to, get in and, maybe reskill, maybe do something different and move at the pace of industry, we could close a lot of the gaps that we have in talent. Your experience is how realistic is that, and what percentage do we think can fill some of these gaps with, folks who have spent some time in, probably the federal government is probably
Yeah.
more applicable, but love your thought on that.
That's a new phenomena for us, right? I mean, we haven't had this ever happen
Yeah.
at this scale, and there's a lot of displaced people that you want to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
It depends on the job, the positions that are available. I will say it's kind of this subtle thing, but pay.
Hmm.
Right? The job I need may not be at the salary that they've been working on at,
Sure.
and that'll be hard for them. I feel the same about adults reskilling,
Hmm.
right? So, and not to knock anything, right? But hey, I've been a carpenter working out in the heat in Arizona at 115 degrees in the summertime for the last 10 years. I don't want to do that anymore,
Yeah.
right? And they make a lot of money, yet all I can offer them at semiconductors is probably an entry level role, right? That's going to
Yeah.
be, maybe a third less than what they were making.
Yeah.
That's not okay for the individual. So we need to figure out how to bridge
Mm.
some of the pay gap that exists, I think. But getting back to the larger population, I have a job open right now, and I literally was looking at who was applying this morning, and I saw 3 ex-federal government people that have applied in workforce development spaces, to be specific,
Yep.
because that's the job I have open. But And they're intriguing resumes, and they're so intriguing. I'm gonna at least call them
Yeah.
and say, what are you interested in, right? And really talk maybe a little bit about, their salary expectations. But I think reskilling has to be one of those solutions to fill our headcount needs in our industry.
Yeah.
And I think I won't mention any semiconductor house out by name in this statement, but there's motorcycle mechanics. There are car mechanics that are going, you know what? I don't want to turn a wrench anymore. I want to do something else. I think they would be great technicians on the factory floor because they understand pneumatics and vacuum and electric and mechanical, whether it's a facilities tech role, a facilities engineer, or working on a tool set, right?
Yeah.
I came out of the military with a tech school working on navigational equipment in airplanes,
Right.
not even close to semiconductors. And I think I did okay, right? Because it was similar baseline skill set that I had to apply to now and learn semiconductors. And you know as well as I do, right? We don't expect people, unless we're hiring an experienced person, we don't expect people, new college grads or others, to have the skills on working on an implanter or an etch tool or a packaging tool, right? Because we're going to teach them that once they come on board.
Yeah.
I need people with the basic skill sets. And if people have basic skill sets, I think as an industry, we need to look outside of where we've been looking and say, there's some other people out there that may be really good at doing this stuff that are available. And we should break down a little wall and give it a try. Because again, I'm afraid of the talent pipeline, and this is a pipeline that exists.
Yeah.
That might want to, over time, make more money, not work in 115-degree heat. Now they exchange that for working in a clean room.
Right.
So,
well, it always has amazed me at how hiring managers, how some companies get so myopic and go, oh, if you don't have experience of some sort in my type of industry or my type of manufacturing, I don't even want to talk to you.
Yep.
And it's like, if someone is smart, they have a good learning agility, they're motivated, they're accountable. Boy, some of that stuff goes a long way from, understanding the nuances and learning the differences.
Here's what some of the semiconductor houses say. Great motorcycle mechanic, and this is personal, so I won't say much about it, but my son's a motorcycle mechanic, a master mechanic at Harley Davidson, opened his own shop, and he wants to do something else. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he'd be awesome in this field, in semiconductor. Well, he can't move to Arizona, but there's semiconductors where he lives, and I got through my connections, our connections, I got him connected with people at that semiconductor house, and the feedback was, hey, you know what? Go get this certificate in next year and a half, and then we'll interview you. And he's like, well, hold on a minute. I have 3 kids and a wife.
Yeah.
Right. How am I supposed to work part-time, go do that, and then apply? And by the way, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. He's got the mechanical skills, the electrical skills, pumps, pneumatics. You got to have facilities at a minimum, right? Needs, let alone a technician in your fab. Why don't you? And it's not even risk-taking.
Yeah.
This is about opportunity and getting outside the box, right? To your point.
Well, understanding that it's the people and the underlying talent and capabilities of those people that's going to drive your organization forward. And let's get to the just core of diversity is about also background. It's not skin color or gender. Background and experience creates a whole lot of value within an organization.
You and I are on the same wavelength. I was not going there specifically, but it's a component of diversity to your point. But what do we talk about most often in our industry? Innovation.
Yeah.
Well, bringing people in with different talents from different industries, talk about potential for innovation, right? Are we short-sighting ourselves by not looking at that with more open eyes?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that I loved about Intel in the 90s really in the 90s.
Yeah,
It lost its way a little bit in, once it hit, 2010 and whatnot. But it, Intel brought in just really, really smart,
right.
driven people from all different backgrounds.
Yes.
And we you and I came from very different backgrounds, but
Yeah,
we worked together, and we did some amazing things over in Asia with the rest of
absolutely.
the team. And that's a forgotten tool that I think HR
So
and
true.
hiring leaders
So true. So
forget
true.
about.
Everyone's from Missouri, the Show Me State. So the first person that goes, hey, this person's a Harley Davidson mechanic, and he's out there turning a wrench on an implanter that's a million, what is it, 1.5 million or a couple $1 million, whatever it is. Probably a lot more expensive than that today. I'm dating myself. And he's rocking it or she's rocking it. All it takes is one, and then I'm going to go hire more of those people
Yeah. Oh yeah.
or
Yeah.
people like them with those like skills to actually beef up my internal strength of
Yeah.
talent. I agree with you.
I mean, one of the areas that I looked at and actually have done some hiring are professional athletes,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So once they're done with their sports career, what do they do,
Yeah.
right? Because if they've gone through, especially Division 1, they've got to the pros or semi pros. They've got drive, they've got
Yeah.
ambition, they know how to win and compete, but they have all those the core DNA that companies look for. But like military, there's a transition period of going from that industry into whatever they're going into, and
Yeah.
and if you have a little bit of patience, it's a great avenue to get some amazing people.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. Well, let's see. So Scott, one last question for you, because we're running out of time. We could probably talk another couple
We
hours.
probably could.
Um, so if you want to look ahead,
Yeah.
and kind of the future of work is kind of big. We've seen so much change in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of remote and hybrid and AI and you name it.
Yeah.
The aging workforce and skilled trades not having enough. I mean, we could go down the list. Is there a shift or two that you're really keeping an eye on in the workforce that you think our listeners and leaders should be aware of?
I might just state the obvious or maybe even repeat it. A lot of kids graduate from high school aren't going to college. I read a statistic and not sure it's accurate or not, but it said 52% of all kids that graduate from high school, right, don't do anything for the first year,
Yeah,
right? And I'm going,
I
okay,
believe
I don't know if
that.
that statistic's true, but it kind of makes sense,
I believe
right?
that.
Why not?
Yeah,
Why aren't they starting a job or a career with a company? Why aren't they going to community college to kind of hone in the skills? Why aren't they going to university? And I think some of that is because they don't know, right, what they want to do, and they weren't given that pathway to look at something that's a little bit more unique.
yeah,
Um, and that they wouldn't know about. So awareness marketing of what exists out there is not a trend, but we need to do a better job, regardless of the industry, to actually let people know about the jobs you have and how good they are and what a great culture you have as well. I think. But the other one is not everyone decides to go to college. In fact, a lot of the workers in semiconductors and advanced manufacturing, and actually, and in aerospace and defense as well, we need to hire more technician
yeah,
types, more
yeah,
entry level types than ever before,
yeah,
right? And that's not something new that I'm telling you that you don't, but it's a huge trend out there over the last several years, and a lot of literature on it now federal government, chips, you name it, it's out there, but we haven't solved that yet.
Yeah.
Right. And getting them career ready by the end of high school is the key.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And those that drop out of high school and go for their GED, right, what's the avenue for them to follow a pathway to our industry, because we're missing out on that talent as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really about, how do we solve the entry level technician and operator, MT, MS, whatever we're going to call them, those entry level jobs that are coming to our industry and others, and how do we get them ready? And I think I'm going to take a step back real quick from that. The step back is, yeah, it's good to create awareness, right? It's good to have them go down a pathway, right? But if they never get exposure to a day in the life of what that job really looks like in that workplace, turnover is going to be high. It will continue to be high. So you'll hire, but they're going to leave in 6 months, a year, 2 years, because it's not what they signed up for. It's not what they understood. So if we can do a better job of creating experience and understanding in our young people, or reskilling adults, or whoever, that says, oh, by the way, you're going to have to don a bunny suit, speaking of semiconductors, and you're going to have to work, 12 hours in that bunny suit. Yes, you get a break. Yes, you get lunches, but for most of the time you're in a bunny suit. Yeah. Right. And you got that laminar flow blowing in your face and something. So if you're claustrophobic, maybe not the right job for you. Right. But if you're open to it, and oh, by the way, when you're touching a tool or moving things around, you have to do it with 2 layers of gloves on. Right. Hey, let's practice that. Is that something you think you can do? Oh, yeah, I'm still really jazzed about the job. I want to pursue it. And others are going to go, nope, no, thank you. Don't want to do that. I'll look somewhere else. And that's fine, too.
Yeah.
But it's not only preparing them for the right skills, right, and capabilities that they need right out of high school, and then they decide community college or they decide 4-year. It's about making sure they understand whatever job they're going to, they understand what it looks like, what they're going to do day in and day out. And industry needs to actually provide that more to help these up and coming talent pools. So,
yeah. Well,
I'm not sure that was rocket science or awareness, but it's something that I don't think exists very well today.
I think it's a good call out. Certainly, as companies look to build more manufacturing capability in the U.S., and it's a great call out for anyone who's listening that may have kids. Semiconductor companies. I can only speak for Intel back in the day. It would cost upwards to $50,000 to train someone that's going to work in the clean room.
Right.
And so the importance of getting it right is that much more critical for the company, and being able to have students get some hands-on experience so they can sense would I like it or not. So
yeah, absolutely. Apprenticeships are great, internships are great, but not every kid gets that opportunity. So what do you give to those students that don't have those opportunities? Right. And I think that helps us kind of get the pipeline that we need.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Scott, this has been so insightful. You have a wealth of knowledge and experience. I'd like to give you an opportunity. Is there a website that individuals could go to if they wanted to learn more about, what you've been doing with the AEEC and whatnot in helping reskill and build the workforce of the future in Arizona?
Yeah, I'll actually do 2 things. AEEC.org, AEEC, or it's AZEEC.org is the first one. And then, I'm always up for a conversation. So HHR Consulting 2024 at gmail.com. I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested with whatever we said and a lot more.
Fantastic.
So, hey, Jeff, I appreciate this time. It's been fun just catching up with you, first of all, but also sharing experiences and just talking about, I think, something that's important to a lot of industry, a lot of education, a lot of parents and kids in our world.
A lot of leaders in HR, for sure. Absolutely. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us bring these great conversations. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. So until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep putting the pieces together. See you soon on The Leadership Puzzle.